I never thought I'd find love in the belly of a ship, in the heat and darkness where most people never venture. But that's exactly where it happened, in the most unexpected place, with the most unexpected person. My name is Adrian, and 6 months ago I signed on as a deckhand on the Maritime Duchess, a cargo vessel that runs supplies between Pacific ports. I needed the work, needed to get away from everything familiar, needed time to think about who I was and what I wanted. The sea seemed like the perfect place to disappear for a while. What I didn't expect was that disappearing would actually help me find myself. The first time I saw him, I barely registered his existence. We were 2 days out of port, and the chief engineer was giving me a tour of the engine room. That's when I noticed the stoker, this guy covered in grease and sweat, his face smudged with coal dust, working the furnace with this intense concentration. He glanced up when we passed, and for just a second our eyes met. His were this striking grey-blue colour, like storm clouds over the ocean. Then he looked back down at his work, and I forgot about him almost immediately. Almost. My bunk was in the crew quarters on the upper deck, a cramped space I shared with 5 other guys. It was loud and stuffy, and the constant motion of the ship made it hard to sleep those first few weeks. I'd lie there at night, listening to the snoring and the creaking of the hull, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. I'd left behind a comfortable job, a nice apartment, and a string of failed relationships with women that never felt quite right. I was 28 years old, and still hadn't figured out why nothing ever clicked. Why I always felt like I was playing a role instead of living my life. It was during the 3rd week at sea that everything changed. We hit rough weather, and the constant pitching and rolling made my seasickness return with a vengeance. I couldn't keep anything down, couldn't sleep, and the close quarters of the bunk room felt suffocating. Around midnight, desperate for relief, I stumbled out onto the deck despite the storm, gulping in the cold air and trying not to throw up over the railing. That's when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned, and there he was. The stoker. Up close, without the coal dust, I could actually see his face. Strong jawline, slightly crooked nose like it had been broken once, and those incredible eyes that seemed to see right through me. "You shouldn't be out here in this weather," he said. His voice was deeper than I expected, with a slight accent I couldn't quite place. "Come with me. I know a better spot." I was too miserable to argue. I followed him down through the ship, past the crew quarters, down narrow metal stairs that rang under our boots, deeper into the vessel than I'd ever been. The air grew warmer as we descended, and I could hear the steady thrum of the engines getting louder. He led me through a maze of corridors until we reached a small room I'd never seen before. It was tucked away near the engine room, barely bigger than a closet, but it had a narrow bunk, and most importantly, it was warm and still. The motion of the ship felt less severe this far down. "This is my space," he said, gesturing around the cramped quarters. "The stoker's berth. Not much, but it's quiet, and the engine noise helps you sleep once you get used to it. You can rest here tonight. The warmth and the steady position will help with the seasickness." I must have looked uncertain because he smiled, and it completely transformed his face. "I'm Miles, by the way, and don't worry, I'll be in the engine room most of the night anyway. You'll have the place to yourself." Before I could thank him or even ask why he was being so kind to someone he barely knew, he was gone. I collapsed onto the bunk, and he was right. The warmth, the steady engine hum, the reduced motion, it all combined to finally let me relax. I fell asleep within minutes, the first real sleep I'd had in days. I woke up several hours later to find Miles sitting on the floor near the bunk, his back against the wall, reading a worn paperback by the light of a small lamp. He noticed I was awake and looked up. "Feeling better?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, sitting up slowly. "Much better. Thank you. I should probably get back to my bunk, though." He shrugged. "You're welcome to stay. I'm used to sleeping in shifts anyway. And honestly, it's nice to have company. It gets lonely down here." There was something in the way he said it, a vulnerability that caught me off guard. I found myself wanting to stay, wanting to talk to this stranger who'd shown me unexpected kindness. So I did. That night we talked for hours. I learned that Miles was 31, that he'd been working on ships for almost a decade, that he'd grown up in a small coastal town in Oregon and left home at 18 to see the world. He asked about my life, and I found myself telling him things I'd never told anyone, about feeling lost, about the failed relationships, about the sense that I was living someone else's life instead of my own. He listened without judgment, those grey-blue eyes steady and attentive. When I finally ran out of words, he said something that stuck with me. Sometimes we have to lose ourselves completely before we can find who we really are. The ocean's good for that. It strips away all the bullshit and leaves you with just yourself. I started spending more time below deck after that night. I'd finish my shifts and find excuses to wander down to the engine room, to that warm, hidden space where Miles worked. He never seemed surprised to see me, just smiled that transforming smile and made room for me in his world. I learned the rhythm of his work, the careful attention he paid to the furnace, the way he could tell by sound alone when something wasn't running right. I watched the way his muscles moved under his shirt when he shoveled coal, the careful precision of his movements, the pride he took in his work. And slowly, without quite realizing it was happening, I started noticing other things too. The way his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck when it got damp with sweat. The rare, genuine laugh that seemed to come from deep in his chest. The way he'd absently touch my arm when he was making a point. Casual contact that sent electricity through me. One evening, about 5 weeks into the voyage, we were in his berth during his break. I was sitting on the bunk, and he was on the floor as usual. And we were talking about nothing and everything. He was telling me about a port in Thailand where the night market sold the best food he'd ever tasted. And I was watching his face as he talked, the animation in his eyes, the way his hands moved to illustrate his points. And suddenly, like a door opening in my mind, I understood. This feeling, this pull toward him, this constant desire to be in his presence, it wasn't just friendship. It was attraction. It was desire. It was the thing I'd been missing in every relationship I'd ever tried to force with women. And the realization didn't scare me the way I thought it would. Instead, it felt like finally understanding the punchline to a joke everyone else had gotten years ago. Miles must have noticed something in my expression because he stopped mid-sentence. "What?" he asked. "Do I have coal dust on my face again?" "No," I said, and my voice came out rough. "No, you're fine. I was just thinking." "About what?" And I couldn't say it, couldn't put words to this massive realization that felt like it was reorganizing my entire understanding of myself. So instead, I just shook my head and smiled. And after a moment, he went back to his story. But something had shifted, and I think we both felt it. The next few days were torture. I couldn't stop thinking about Miles, couldn't stop analyzing every interaction, every smile, every casual touch. I found myself lying in my bunk at night, unable to sleep, replaying conversations and wondering if I was imagining the way he seemed to lean closer when we talked, the way his eyes would linger on me just a fraction too long. I started avoiding him, scared of what I was feeling, scared of ruining the friendship, that had become the most important thing in my life. But staying away from him felt like trying not to breathe. By the third day, I was miserable, and apparently it showed. One of the other deckhands, a guy named Carter, pulled me aside after our shift. "You all right, man? You've been acting weird." "I'm fine," I said. "Just tired." He studied me for a moment, then said, "Look, I don't know what's going on with you, but whatever it is, deal with it. Life's too short to walk around looking like someone kicked your dog." He was right, of course. That night, I made my way back down to Miles's berth. He was there, lying on the bunk reading, and when he saw me, his face lit up in a way that made my heart skip. "Thought you'd forgotten about me," he said, sitting up. "Haven't seen you in a few days." I stood in the doorway, suddenly unsure. "Been busy," I said, which was a terrible lie, and we both knew it. He set his book aside and looked at me. Really looked at me. And I saw something in his expression I hadn't let myself see before. Concern, yes, but also something else. Something that looked like hope mixed with fear. "Adrian," he said quietly, "come here. Talk to me." I stepped into the small room and closed the door behind me. The space suddenly felt even smaller, the air charged with something electric. I sat down on the floor where I usually sat, but this time Miles slid off the bunk and sat next to me, close enough that our shoulders touched. "What's going on?" he asked. "Did I do something wrong?" "No," I said quickly. "God, no. It's not you. It's me. I'm trying to figure some things out." "What kind of things?" And maybe it was the warmth of the room, or the steady thrum of the engines, or the way he was looking at me like I was something precious and fragile. But suddenly, the words were there, ready to be spoken. "I think I've been lying to myself for a long time," I said, "about who I am, about what I want. And being here, being with you, it's made me see things I've been avoiding." His hand found mine, fingers intertwining, and the simple contact felt monumental. "What have you been avoiding?" he asked softly. I turned to look at him, and we were so close I could see the flecks of darker blue in his eyes, could feel his breath on my face. "This," I said. "You. The way I feel when I'm with you. I've never felt this with anyone before, and it scares me, because I finally understand why nothing else ever worked." For a long moment, he didn't say anything, just held my hand and looked at me with an expression so tender it made my chest ache. Then, slowly, carefully, he lifted his other hand and touched my face, his palm warm against my cheek. "I was hoping you'd figure it out," he said. "I've been waiting for you to see it. I saw it in you the first time you came down here, the first night we talked. The way you were searching for something, the way you looked at me. I recognized it because I've been there. I've been where you are." "You have?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He nodded. "Took me until I was 23 to accept it, to stop fighting who I was. It's why I came out here, to the ships. Out here, you can be yourself. Out here, nobody cares as long as you do your job. And out here, sometimes you meet someone who makes you remember why it was worth accepting the truth about yourself." His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, and I leaned into the touch, closing my eyes. When I opened them again, he was even closer, and I could see the question in his eyes, the uncertainty mixed with desire. I closed the distance between us, pressing my lips to his in a kiss that felt like coming home after a lifetime of being lost. It was gentle at first, tentative, both of us testing this new territory. But then his hand slid into my hair, pulling me closer, and the kiss deepened into something urgent and necessary. I'd been kissed before, plenty of times, but never like this. Never with this feeling of rightness, of pieces finally clicking into place. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "Is this okay?" he asked. "Are you okay?" I laughed, and it came out shaky but genuine. "I'm better than okay. I feel like I've been sleepwalking my whole life and I just woke up." We stayed like that for a while, holding each other in the warm darkness of his berth, the engines thrumming around us like a heartbeat. He told me about his first relationship with a man, about the fear and joy of finally being honest with himself. I told him about the years of confusion, of trying to force myself into a mold that didn't fit, of the relief of finally understanding. That night was the first of many. We were careful, discreet. Life on a ship is close quarters, and while Miles was right that most people didn't care, there was no reason to invite trouble. But in the privacy of his berth, in the warmth below deck, we built something real. I learned everything about him. The scar on his shoulder from a childhood accident, the way he hummed when he was concentrating, his love of old science fiction novels and terrible action movies, the fact that he was surprisingly good at chess, the way he liked his coffee so strong it was almost undrinkable, the gentleness in his hands despite the rough work they did. And he learned about me, my tendency to overthink everything, my terrible singing voice, my love of bad puns that made him groan and laugh at the same time, the way I got quiet when I was processing emotions, my fear of being vulnerable, and the way he could coax me out of that fear just by being patient and present. We had 6 weeks together on that voyage, 6 weeks of stolen moments and quiet conversations and learning what it meant to be honest with myself and with another person. 6 weeks of falling completely, irrevocably in love. The night before we were due to dock, I lay in his arms in the narrow bunk, both of us quiet. The reality of what came next hung heavy in the air. We'd both signed on for single voyages, and there was no guarantee we'd be on the same ship again. "Come with me," Miles said suddenly. "I'm signing on to a new ship, longer route, Southeast Asia and back, 6-month contract. They're still looking for crew." "I want to," I said, "but I have things to deal with back home. My apartment, my stuff, people I need to talk to." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I know. I don't want this to end. I don't want you to be something that happened at sea and then disappeared when we hit land." I turned in his arms so I could see his face. "You think I could walk away from this? From you?" "Miles, you helped me understand who I am. You gave me the warmest spot below deck, and I don't just mean this room. You gave me a place where I could finally be honest, where I could finally be myself. I'm not walking away from that. So what do we do?" he asked. "I meet you," I said. "I go home. I deal with my stuff. And then I meet you. Whatever ship you're on, wherever it's going, I'll be there." He kissed me then, deep and slow, and I tried to memorize everything about the moment. The warmth of his skin, the steady sound of the engines, the way his heart beat against mine, the taste of his lips, the feeling of being exactly where I was supposed to be. We docked the next morning, and saying goodbye was harder than I expected. We stood on the dock trying to be casual, just 2 crew members parting ways. But his hand found mine for just a moment, squeezed once, and I saw everything I felt reflected in his eyes. "Call me," he said. "Text me. Let me know you're okay." "I will," I promised. "And Miles, thank you. For everything." He smiled that transforming smile. "Thank you for trusting me." Thank you for being brave enough to see the truth. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I went back to my apartment, broke my lease, sold most of my stuff. I had difficult conversations with my parents, coming out to them over the phone because I couldn't wait any longer, to be honest. They took it better than I expected. My mom crying and saying she just wanted me to be happy. My dad quiet, but ultimately supportive. I called Miles every day, and we'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. He told me about his new ship, the Maritime Phoenix, about the route that would take them through a dozen ports over 6 months. I told him about the freedom I felt, about how scary and exhilarating it was to finally live authentically. 3 weeks after we docked, I signed my own contract with the Phoenix. 3 weeks after that, I was walking up the gangway with my duffel bag, my heart pounding, scanning the deck for a familiar face. And then I saw him. Miles, standing near the stern, watching for me. When our eyes met, he grinned, and I felt that same electric pull I'd felt in the engine room, in his berth, in every moment we'd shared. I dropped my bag and walked to him, not caring who saw, and pulled him into a kiss that felt like coming home. "Welcome aboard," he said when we finally broke apart. "Ready for an adventure?" I looked at him, at this man who'd helped me find myself in the warmest spot below deck, who'd shown me that love could be honest and real, and exactly what I'd been searching for my entire life. "With you," I said. "Always." We're 6 months into this voyage now, and every day I wake up grateful. Grateful for the storm that sent me below deck. Grateful for Miles's kindness. Grateful for the courage to finally be honest with myself. Life on a ship isn't easy, and being in a relationship in such close quarters has its challenges. But every night, when I make my way down to our berth, to the warmth and the steady engine hum and Miles's arms, I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The ocean gave me the space to lose myself, and Miles gave me the warmth to find who I really was. And that's a gift I'll carry with me for the rest of my life, no matter where the tides take us.